I always lock my front door. It's a habit, muscle memory. Turn the key, check the handle, double check before bed. I live alone. There's no one else to forget, no one else to blame if something is out of place. So when I woke up this morning and found the door unlocked, I knew it hadn't been me. I stood there, gripping the doorknob. I remembered locking it last night. I was sure of it. But there it was, unlatched, open, just a crack. The air felt colder than usual. I pushed the door shut and locked it again, harder this time. I tried to shake off the unease. Maybe I was just distracted when I got home. Maybe I had been tired. Still, the feeling lingered. It wasn't just that the door was unlocked. It was that nothing else was out of place. If someone had broken in, wouldn't something be missing? Wouldn't there be a mess? A drawer pulled open, a light left on. Nothing had been touched, but somehow, someone had been inside. I tried to let it go. I made coffee, went through my usual routine, told myself it was nothing. But the feeling stuck with me, that gnawing unease, like I was forgetting something important, like something in my apartment wasn't quite right. I stood in the center of the room, scanning everything. The couch, the coffee table, the kitchen counter. Everything looked normal. Nothing was missing. Nothing was out of place. But the longer I stood there, the stronger the feeling got. Something was wrong. I just couldn't tell what. It was the worst kind of fear, the kind that didn't come from a shadow in the corner or a noise in the dark. It was deeper than that, quieter. A whisper in the back of my mind telling me, pay attention. I walked through the apartment slowly, eyes darting from object to object. My books were still stacked by the bed. My coat still hung by the door. My phone charger was still plugged in by the couch. Nothing was missing. Nothing had moved. And then I saw it. A chair. One of my kitchen chairs. It was pulled out just slightly, no more than an inch, barely noticeable. But I hadn't used the kitchen table yesterday. I hadn't touched that chair. And yet, someone had. A cold feeling spread through my chest. I pushed it back under the table with a shaky hand, stood there for a second, staring at it, trying to convince myself I was being paranoid. That's when I noticed something else. The feeling hadn't gone away, because even though I had found the chair, something still felt off, like there was still something in the apartment I hadn't noticed yet, something I was overlooking. I tried to shake it off. It was just a chair. Maybe I bumped it without realizing. Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe my brain was searching for patterns that didn't exist. I turned away, headed for the bathroom. Let the faucet run until the water got cold and splashed my face. Then I reached for my toothbrush and stopped. My fingers barely grazed the handle before I pulled away, my stomach twisting. Something felt wrong. Not obviously wrong. It was the same toothbrush I'd always used, same color, same brand, sitting in the same cup by the sink. But the moment I touched it, my body reacted. Like my brain knew something I didn't. I picked it up, slowly, turned it over in my hand. It looked normal, but when I ran my thumb along the bristles, a shiver crawled down my spine. They were damp, like it had been used. I stood there, gripping it too tightly, my mind racing. I hadn't used it yet today. I had just woken up. I had just walked in here. So, why was it wet? I put it down carefully, like it was something dangerous. My own toothbrush. Something I used every day. Now, I didn't want to touch it. Now I couldn't stop picturing someone else standing here, at my sink, brushing their teeth like they lived here, like they belonged. I backed out of the bathroom, my breath shallow. The chair, the toothbrush. Something was off. Someone had been here, and they hadn't taken anything. They had just used my things. I backed out of the bathroom, heart pounding. The chair, the toothbrush. Someone had been here. I turned in slow circles, scanning the apartment, trying to tell myself I was overreacting. Maybe the toothbrush had gotten wet when I washed my face. Maybe I bumped the chair last night and didn't remember. Maybe, but that feeling was still there. That deep, gnawing sense that something was wrong. The air felt heavy, too still, like the whole apartment was holding its breath. Then I heard it, a sound, soft, barely noticeable, coming from the bedroom. I froze, every muscle locking up, my ears strained, heartbeat thudding in my throat. For a second, there was nothing. Then, a faint shift, like fabric moving, like the rustle of someone shifting their weight. I was alone. I took a slow step forward, careful, deliberate. The bedroom door was open just a crack. Had it been like that before? I didn't remember. I reached out, fingertips brushing the edge of the door, pushed it open. The bed was empty. The room was empty, but the sheets looked wrong. Not messy, not tossed like I'd forgotten to make the bed, like someone had been sitting there. I stood frozen in the doorway, stomach twisting, breath shallow. The chair, the toothbrush, the unlocked door. Now this. It wasn't a break-in. Nothing was missing. It wasn't a mistake. I knew I had locked the door. So why did it feel like someone was still here? I backed out of the bedroom, slowly, carefully. My skin felt tight, like the air itself was pressing against me. I needed to calm down. I grabbed my phone from the counter, desperate for some kind of normalcy, some distraction from the feeling that something in my own home wasn't mine anymore. The screen lit up as I picked it up. New notification. I frowned. It wasn't a text, not an email, just a simple default reminder. Don't forget to lock the door. A sharp, cold chill crawled down my spine. I hadn't set that reminder. My fingers hovered over the screen, my stomach twisting. Was this a glitch? Had I said it weeks ago and forgotten? That wasn't it, because when I checked the time, my blood turned to ice. The reminder had been set an hour ago, when I was already awake, already walking through the apartment, already realizing the door had been unlocked. A deep, ringing silence filled my ears. I was the only one with access to my phone. I was the only one who should be able to set reminders. So either my memory was failing me, or someone had set it for me. A notification meant to be helpful. A small, quiet message to make sure I didn't forget. Like someone was watching out for me. Or worse, like someone was watching me. I swallowed hard, my grip tightening on the phone. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining things. The door, the chair, the toothbrush, the notification, they were all real. I tapped open my calendar, suddenly afraid of what I might find. The screen loaded, and I scanned through the dates, my breath coming too fast. Most of it was normal. Appointments I recognized, reminders I had actually set. But then, tonight, 8 p.m., an event I hadn't created. Meeting at home. My skin prickled. I clicked on it, pulse hammering. There were no details, no notes. But the invite, there was an invite. Someone else had been added. Their name wasn't there, just an empty gray space where a contact should be. Like the phone couldn't register it. Like whoever made it wasn't supposed to exist. The time read 7:46 p.m. 14 minutes. I stared at the screen, my breath caught in my throat. Someone had set a meeting at my apartment, and they were going to be here soon. The clock read 7:59 p.m. My hands were shaking. My breath was too loud, too shallow. I stared at my phone, watching the numbers change, waiting for 8 p.m. The moment the time shifted, my screen lit up with a new notification. New message. No name. No number. Just unknown. I didn't want to open it. I didn't want to see what it said. But my thumb moved anyway, like I wasn't in control anymore. Like something expected me to look. The message sat on my screen, glaring at me. I'm here. My heart pounded in my ears. The apartment felt too quiet, like the walls were holding their breath. Then, a floor creak. Behind me, my body reacted before my mind could catch up. I spun around, phone light cutting through the dim room. My pulse was hammering, every muscle tense, ready for nothing. The apartment was empty, silent. I swallowed hard, my skin prickling. I wasn't crazy. The door had been unlocked. The chair had moved. The toothbrush had been wet. The reminder, the calendar event, the message. I forced myself to take a breath. A slow, deep inhale. Then I heard it. Not a knock. Not a whisper. Just the faint hum of my kitchen fridge. The compressor kicking on. The same way it always did around this time. The same low vibration that had always made the floor creak in just the right way. Right behind me, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. The fridge. That was the sound I heard. That had to be it. My hands were still shaking as I looked back at my phone. I stared at the message, fingers hovering over the screen, then checked my Wi-Fi. It had disconnected. The message hadn't been sent to me. It wasn't from a stranger. It was an automated text from my smart home app. I'm here. The same message it always sent when my Wi-Fi reset and the system reconnected. I let out a small, breathless laugh. It felt stupid now. I was overtired, stressed, letting my mind run wild. It had all been coincidence. The door? Probably my own mistake. The chair? Maybe I bumped it days ago. The toothbrush? Maybe I rinsed it out without thinking. The calendar event? A weird glitch. Everything had an explanation. I had scared myself over nothing. I climbed into bed, still tense, still uneasy, but rational again. Tomorrow I'd change the locks, just in case. But I was fine. I was safe. And I was alone. I grew up in this house. It's not huge, but it's been in my family for decades. I know every inch of it. Every creaky floorboard, every drafty window, every weird little sound it makes when the pipes expand. So when I started hearing something moving inside the wall, I figured it was just the old house settling. Houses make noise, especially old ones. But this was different. It wasn't the usual wooden groans or the faint scurry of a mouse. It was a soft, deliberate scraping, like someone dragging their fingernails along the inside of the wall. At first, I ignored it. I had to. I live alone, and the thought of anything else being inside my house was too unsettling. But the noise kept happening, always at night, always in the same spot, just behind my bedroom wall, near the corner. One night, I decided to knock. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to prove to myself that it was nothing. Maybe I just needed to hear silence in response. I knocked twice, and something knocked back. My breath caught in my throat. That wasn't possible. Houses don't knock back. I swallowed hard and placed my hand against the wall. It felt solid, cool under my palm, just like it always had. But now, it didn't feel right. I knocked again, softer this time. 3 slow taps. Nothing. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe I was overtired. But something about that spot nagged at me. I ran my fingers along the wall, pressing lightly, feeling for a difference in texture. Then I knocked just a little to the left. Thud. Solid, like any normal wall. A little to the right. Thud. Still solid. Then, directly over the place where I had first heard the noise. Hollow. The sound echoed back differently. It wasn't drywall over studs. It was open space. That shouldn't be possible. The other side of this wall should have been the outer structure of the house. But if it was hollow, what was back there? I stepped away, my skin crawling. I never questioned this wall before, never thought about it. But now I couldn't stop staring. There was space behind it, and something inside had knocked back. I backed away from the wall, my heart pounding. The house had been in my family for decades. There had to be some record of how it was built. If there was an open space behind that wall, I needed to know why. I headed to the hallway closet where my grandfather had kept old paperwork. Stacks of yellowed envelopes, brittle folders, and handwritten notes filled the shelves. I dug through them until I found a rolled-up blueprint near the back, its edges curled and cracking from age. I unrolled it carefully on the dining table, smoothing my fingers over the faded ink. The layout of the house was exactly as I remembered. Living room, kitchen, 3 bedrooms, a single bathroom. But as I traced my fingers to the area where my bedroom wall should be, my stomach dropped. The space behind that section of the wall wasn't there. According to the blueprints, the wall was part of the exterior of the house. There was nothing beyond it. But I knew that wasn't true. I had knocked. I had heard the hollow sound. And, more importantly, I had heard something inside it. I searched for anything that could explain it. An extension, a renovation, a note scribbled in the margins. But there was nothing. It was like that part of the house didn't exist on paper. I checked the back of the blueprint, hoping for additional sketches or modifications. That's when I saw it. Faint, smudged with age, there was a note written in small, precise handwriting near the bottom corner. "Do not open it." I stared at the words, my pulse pounding in my ears. The ink was old, faded into the yellowed paper, but the message was clear. Someone had known. Someone had wanted to make sure no one ever touched that wall. I ran my fingers over the note, feeling the slight indentation of the ink, as if whoever wrote it had pressed down hard, like they wanted to make sure it would never be erased. I tried to think logically. Maybe it was an old construction warning, a message left by a builder about bad wiring or structural damage. But if that were the case, why wasn't this space on the blueprint at all? My skin crawled at the thought. I needed more information. I reached for my phone and called the only person who might have answers. My uncle. He was the last one to live in this house before me. If anyone knew about the history of this place, it would be him. He picked up after a few rings. "Hey, kid, everything all right?" I hesitated, gripping the edge of the table. "Did you ever notice anything weird about this house?" Silence. "What kind of weird?" he asked carefully. I swallowed hard. "I found the blueprints. There's a section of my bedroom wall that's hollow, but the plans say it's supposed to be solid. And there's a note." A sharp breath cut me off. "You found the note?" Something about his voice sent a chill down my spine. I hadn't even told him what it said. "You knew about it?" I pressed. A long pause. Then, in a quiet, serious voice, he said, "Listen to me very carefully. Do not touch that wall. Don't knock on it. Don't mess with it. Just leave it alone." I felt a cold dread creeping into my chest. "Why?" "Because," he said, lowering his voice to a near whisper, "we sealed it for a reason." I gripped the phone tighter. "What do you mean we sealed it?" Another long pause. I could hear the faint rustle of him shifting on the other end, like he was deciding how much to say. Finally, he exhaled. "Look, kid, I'm not trying to scare you. But if you found that note, then you need to listen to me. Leave it alone." "That's not an answer," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "You lived here. You know something. What's behind that wall?" His breathing was steady, but tense. "I don't know." I waited. He sighed, then added, "Not exactly. That wasn't good enough." "Then tell me what you do know." He hesitated again. "When I was a kid, I heard it too, the noises, the knocking." A cold chill prickled the back of my neck. "You heard it?" "Yeah." His voice was lower now. But I was dumb enough to knock back. My stomach clenched. And there was a long silence. Too long. I almost thought the call had dropped before he finally spoke. "I got a response," he said. "Not just knocking. A voice." I gripped the phone, feeling my own pulse hammering in my throat. What did it say? He took a deep breath, like he was trying to steady himself before answering. It asked for my name. I swallowed hard, but it sounded wrong, like someone struggling to get the words out. He paused, like he was reliving the memory. It kept whispering it, over and over, like it was trying to get comfortable saying it. I stared at the wall, my skin crawling. "Then what happened?" "I did what you should do," he said, his voice firm. "I told my dad. My grandfather." He didn't even hesitate. The next day, he and a couple of his friends from town sealed up whatever was back there. Drywall, plaster, paint, like it was never there. Then he wrote the note on the blueprints and told me to forget about it. I was gripping the table now, my knuckles white. "Did you ever hear it again?" I asked. His answer came immediately. Never. Relief started to settle until he added, "But I never knocked again, either." I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my uncle's words looping in my head. I never knocked again. The message was clear. Leave it alone. Pretend I never found the hollow spot, never saw the note, never had that conversation at all. I told myself that's exactly what I was going to do. By morning, I'd almost convinced myself it had all been in my head. Just an old house making old house noises. I forced myself through my routine. Shower, coffee, work emails. I didn't even look at the wall. And for a while, nothing happened. Days passed. A week. No noises, no knocking, no strange whispers. I started sleeping better. The paranoia faded. I stopped thinking about it. Then, one night, I woke up to a sound. It was faint, almost too soft to notice. But my blood turned to ice when I realized what it was. A whisper, low, breathy, muffled by the drywall, and it was saying my name. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. It wasn't possible. I hadn't knocked, I hadn't acknowledged it. I had done everything right, but the whisper was still there. It started slow, tentative, like someone testing out a new word. My skin prickled with terror. I squeezed my eyes shut, pulling the blanket over my head like a child hiding from a nightmare. It's not real. It's just my imagination. I lay there for what felt like hours, heart pounding, refusing to move. Eventually, the whispering stopped. By morning, I convinced myself it had been a dream, until I noticed something. The hollow spot in the wall, the one I promised I'd ignore, was different. There was a new crack running along the paint, small, almost invisible, like something inside was pressing against it. I told myself I wouldn't touch it, that I wouldn't knock, wouldn't listen, wouldn't give it any attention, but I couldn't ignore the crack. At first, it was small, just a hairline fracture running down the paint. I tried to convince myself it had always been there, that I just never noticed it before. But over the next few days, it got worse. The thin line deepened, splintering out like veins. Spiderwebbing. The drywall started to bulge ever so slightly, like pressure was being applied from the other side. I didn't touch it, didn't get close. But every morning, the crack had grown just a little bit more. And every night, I would wake up with a suffocating feeling that someone was standing right next to my bed. The whispering didn't return. The knocking didn't either. But something was happening inside that wall. Something was pushing. The realization came slowly. It wasn't that I had found a hollow space. It was that something had been sealed inside. And now, it was getting out. I woke up to a sound I hadn't heard before. A soft crack. Not a knock, not a whisper. Just the unmistakable sound of something splitting open. I sat up too fast, my pulse hammering. The room was dark, the only light coming from the dim glow of my phone screen on the nightstand. Everything was silent. For a second, I thought maybe I imagined it, until my eyes landed on the floor near the wall. A small piece of drywall lay on the hardwood, just a thin fragment, barely the size of my thumbnail. But it hadn't been there before. I swung my legs over the side of the bed, forcing myself to get closer. My breath felt trapped in my chest as I crouched down and picked up the broken piece. The crack in the wall was bigger. Not just longer, but wider. Like a thin sliver had actually split open. I reached out before I could stop myself, running my fingertips over the jagged edge. The drywall was curled inward, as if something had pressed against it from the other side. I jerked my hand back, swallowing hard. It was breathing. Not loudly, not exaggerated. But when I leaned in just slightly, I could hear it. Soft, rhythmic breaths, like someone waiting. I stumbled back, heart hammering in my chest. The crack was too small to see through, but I didn't need to see. I could feel it. Something was in there, and now it was one step closer. I shouldn't have done it. I should have left the room, should have left the house. But instead, I picked up my phone, turned on the flashlight, and leaned in close. The crack was small, jagged, barely wide enough to fit the tip of my finger through, but it was open just enough that if I angled the light right, I could see inside. My breath hitched as I slowly lifted my phone, holding it parallel to the wall, shining the beam into the narrow gap. At first, I saw nothing, just a sliver of darkness. I adjusted my grip, tilting the light upward. The space inside wasn't empty. There was something back there. At first, I thought it was wooden beams, maybe part of an old support structure. But as I shifted the angle again, the shape became clearer. It wasn't wood. It was fingers, pressed against the inside of the wall. Long, pale fingers, stiff and unmoving. My stomach turned to ice. I scrambled backward so fast I nearly dropped my phone. My pulse was pounding in my ears, my breath coming in short, ragged gasps. I sat there on the floor, my back against the far wall, staring. That wasn't possible. The whispering hadn't returned. The knocking had stopped. But the crack in the wall was still there. And now, I knew what was waiting behind it. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I sat there, back pressed against the far wall, watching the crack, waiting. I told myself I wouldn't look again, that I wouldn't get close. But as the hours passed and the house remained silent, I started to convince myself that maybe, just maybe, it had been a trick of the light. Maybe those hadn't been fingers at all. By the time the sun rose, exhaustion won over fear. I climbed into bed, keeping my back to the wall, and let sleep take me. I woke up sometime in the afternoon, groggy, head pounding. For a few blissful seconds, I didn't remember what had happened the night before. Then I turned over, and I saw it, lying on the floor beneath the crack. Something small, something wrong. My chest tightened as I forced myself to sit up, to lean in, to look. A fingernail, not a broken piece of drywall, not wood, a human fingernail, yellowed, brittle, ripped off at the base. My stomach twisted. My pulse throbbed in my ears. And then I saw the second thing, a scrap of fabric, dark, threadbare, the kind of material that looked old, decades old. I stared at it, my breath coming in short, sharp bursts. Something inside that wall had moved. Something had pushed through, and it had left a piece of itself behind. I don't remember grabbing my keys, don't remember yanking open the front door. I just know I ran. I haven't been back since. I don't know what's inside that wall. I don't know if the crack has gotten bigger, if more pieces have fallen through. But I do know one thing. My uncle was right. We sealed it for a reason. And now, it's coming out. Turn on notifications so you're the first to know when I upload a new video. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.